Përshëndetje shikues të nderuar, unë jam Kreshtin Gashi dhe ju po ndiqni emisionin Drejtësia në Kosovë. 5 vite më parë në vend janë instaluar prokurorët e Ulekshit, të cilët thonë se janë duke i ndihmuar vendit në luftën kundër krimit të organizuar dhe korrupsionit. Por çfarë janë duke hetuar këta prokurorë dhe si po ju ecën puna atyre, këtë do ta mësojmë pas transmetimit të rubrikës Një vit më parë. Në emisionin e transmetuar me 11 mars 2012, Drejtësia në Kosovë ka raportuar për uzurpimet e pronave shoqërore në Vushtre. Atkohë, Drejtësia në Kosovë ka raportuar se në njërin nga pronat kishte përfituar deputeti komunal Gani Imeri, duke ndërtuar 3 shtëpi pa leje ndërtimi në pronat e ndërmarrjes shoqërore Elan. Këto akuza ishin mohuar nga Naser Imeri, vëllai i deputetit Gani Imeri. Ai na pati thënë se shtëpit i ka ndërtuar vet ai dhe aty nuk ishte gjirt vëllai i tij Gani Imeri, ndërsa përfaqësuesi i ndërmarrjes Elan, Tahir Tahiri, pati thënë se uzurpimi i tokave të kësaj ndërmarrje është bërë nga individ që punojnë në komunë. Tahiri po ashtu pati pretenduar se komuna në mënyrë të kundërligjshme kishte dhënë në shfrytëzim prona të kësaj ndërmarrje për llogaritë të disa ndërmarrjeve private. Këto pretendime ishin kundërshtuar nga zyrtarët komunal, të cilët thonin se tokat në fshatin Stanovc i poshtëm janë prona komunale. Megjithatë, hulumtimi i Drejtësia në Kosovë kishte arritur të argumentonte se këto toka shoqërore janë dhënë në shfrytëzim në mënyrë të kundërligjshme, pa hapur tender, duke shkelur kështu rregulloren e atëhershme të UNMIK-ut dhe ligjin për veçqeverisje lokale, ku kërkoi që në rast se komuna jepte një pronë në shfrytëzim, të kishte një procedurë të hapur dhe të barabartë për të gjithë. Një vit më pas, Drejtësia në Kosovë ka mësuar se Prokuroria Speciale ka ngritur akuzë ndaj kryetarit e komunës së Vushtres Bajram Ulaku, drejtorit të shërbimeve publike Sami Strefi, drejtorit të inspeksionit komunal Bajram Beqiri dhe deputetit të kuvendit komunal Gani Imeri e vëllait të tij Naser Imeri. Sipas akt akuzës, Mulaku akuzohet se që nga shtatori 2012-s, në cilësinë e kryetarit të komunës ka bërë shpërdorim të detyrës zyrtare ose autorizimit, duke shtruar rrugën Amnik Linaku me kubza betoni. Kjo akuzë është vënë në barë edhe drejtorit të shërbimeve publike Sami Istrefi, i cili ka përpiluar dhe nënshkruar kërkesën për aprovimin e mjeteve për shtruarjen e rrugës Avnik Linaku. Të akuzuarit e tjerë sipas akt akuzës janë edhe deputeti i kuvendit komunal të Vushtres Gani Imeri dhe vllai i tij Naseri, të cilët akuzohen për uzurpim të tokës shoqërore, duke ndërtuar kështu 3 shtëpi pa leje. Për mos rënimin e këtyre 3 banesave pa leje, prokuroria ka akuzuar edhe drejtorin e inspeksionit komunal në Vushtre, Bajram Beqiri. Kryetari i Vushtres Bajram Ulaku ka pranuar se ka qenë dijeni që familja Imeri nuk ka pasur leje ndërtimi për 3 shtëpi të tyre.
E kum ditë që Gani Imeri është ndërtuar në shtëpia pa leje në një pronë shoqërore. Po sakt, a është në atë rrugë, ose në atë rrugë, në atë moment kur e kom lëshuar, me të vërtetë e kom lëshuar që po ndërtoj 3 rrugë. Edhe se më ka shku mendja, është edhe aty Gani Imeri apo s'është. As më ka interesuar e punë. Unë qëllimin e kom pas të realizoj projekte për interes gjithë qytetarëve, qysh për realizoj edhe tash. Në qoftë se është e tepërt nështë këtë të thonë, po gjatë 5 vjetëve të qeverisjes time, i kom shtruar dikon 255 km rrugë. Ta është mira me secilin rrugis që shtruar në këto 255 km, e kujna është ko që jeton aty, a meriton ose meriton, po ndoka si punët e prumë.
Kryetari ju thatë se keni ditë se ai po ndërton shtëpi pa leje, pse nuk e keni dhënë urdhën me ndalu ose me rrëzu?
Jo, unë kom pas të informacione, po jo vetëm për Ganin, po për asnjë drejtor i inspeksionit s'ka pas leje PME që me leju me ndërtu pa leje.
A keni ndërmend kandidoni prapë për kryetar komune?
Nuk është kë shkak që në qoftë se s'kandidoj, për me më penguë që mos me kandidu edhe njërë, absolutikisht. Tash publikisht të them që qysh herët, qysh në fillim, kur kom fillu këtë mandat, disa njerëzve, edhe ndoshta ndonjë ndërkombëtar kom thonë që ky do të jetë mandati im i fundit. Po tash ndoshta mund të jetë ky rast që më zgjidh edhe pak më shumë me kandidu edhe një herë. Si do të qoftë është herët me folë për këtë çështje.
Do të jesh kandidat prapë apo jo?
Nuk më i me thonë për gjë.
Shikues të nderuar, ndoshta çfarë ka ndodhur para një viti. Tani po vazhdojmë me analizën se çfarë kanë punuar prokurorët e Ulekshit. Prokurori i Prokurorisë Speciale Cezar Misalsburg ka ardhur nga Polonia në Kosovë në dhjetor të vitit 2010. Detyra e tij kryesore për momentin është hetimi i krimeve të luftës. Ky prokuror është duke hetuar për përgjegjësit për masakrën e Krusës së Vogël. Në emisionin e kaluar, ky prokuror na ka treguar se është duke hetuar 56 të dyshimt për vrasjen e mbi 100 civilëve shqiptar të këtij fshati. Por çfarë përvoje kishte ky prokuror dhe prokurorët të tjerë të EULEX-it para se të merrnin detyrat për hetimin e rasteve kaq të rënda dhe delikate?
Zotni prokuror, kur keni ardhur në Kosovë?
I arrived in Kosovo in December 2010. Initially, I was placed in the District Prosecution Office of Prizren. Later on, I was transferred after a year and a half to the Special Prosecution Office of the Republic of Kosovo in Pristina.
Cili ka qenë profesioni që e keni ushtruar në vendin tuaj?
In Poland, I'm a prosecutor. My last position was the prosecutor of the General Prosecution Office of the Republic of Poland. I've been a prosecutor for 15 years already.
Përse prokurorët e juaj kanë ardhur pikërisht të punojnë në Kosovë e në punojnë në vendet prej nga vinata?
I could give you my personal reasons. When I was in Poland, I was a specialist on certain areas of criminal law. Precisely, it was the European criminal law, and my Polish colleagues, the prosecutors, didn't know much about it initially. So one of my tasks was to very quickly familiarize myself with the European Union criminal law and disseminate this knowledge throughout the country, so that my colleagues knew how to operate in the European Union. And I believe that also when I came to Kosovo, I had something like this in mind, just to share my knowledge with my Kosovo colleagues, because I really, to some extent, maybe I'm a bit idealistic about the world and the people, and I believe that if I know something, I should share this with some other people. And Kosovo, in this particular moment, needs it. So I don't have much, but whatever I have, I'm happy to share always. That is my personal reason.
Nita Amin është një prokurore nga Anglia dhe në Kosovë punon si shefe e task force-s kundër krimit në regionin e Mitrovicës.
In March 2008, I started working as a prosecutor for EULEX.
Cili ka qenë profesioni juaj para se të vini në Kosovë?
Prior to coming here, I was a prosecutor in the United Kingdom. I worked as a prosecutor for over 28 years.
Me çfarë krimesh keni hetuar atje?
I did a whole range of crimes, from traffic violations right through to murders, organized crime, and money laundering, human trafficking, every single crime you can think of.
Prokurori tjetër, Philip Baudin, është një prokuror tjetër I cili vjen nga Belgjika e po ashtu punon në regionin e Mitrovicës.
Well, I arrived here on the 26th of February of last year, so some 11 months ago.
Çka ka qenë profesioni juaj në vendin am prej nga vini?
Well, I had started with getting a degree of law, and after that I have been a defense counsel, a barrister for 12 years in my country. During the same time, for over 6 years, I was a deputy judge. And afterwards, in 1994, I became a public prosecutor. So that's some 18 years ago. And in the last, let's say, 30 years, I gained some experience in multiple facets of the judicial system in Belgium.
Por cila ishte arsyeja që I shtyu këta prokuror që t'i praktikojnë këto punë kaq të mira në vendet e tyre e të vinin të punonin në Kosovë?
Well, in fact, I didn't quit. You know, I'm what they call seconded. That means that for a limited time, I come to Kosovo, but within, let's say, a few months or a year, I will go back to Belgium and reintegrate my basic court function as prosecutor. But the reason to come, well, I have always been interested on traveling and meeting really people, not only on a touristic base, go to countries, but also to really try to live somewhere. So,
Kisha dashur me ditë arsyeën pse keni vendosur me ardh prej Britanisë të Madhe dhe me punu në Kosovë si prokurore?
My main reason was that I worked, as I said, a long time in the UK as a prosecutor, always as a prosecutor. And I also sit as a judge in the UK. And when I read about Kosovo, in those days it was UN who was your UNMIK, and I read about a country that's trying to develop itself in all institutions, not just in the rule of law mission. I thought to myself, wouldn't it be so important a contribution probably if I can add my experience and help in any small way that I can, with all the experience I have from United Kingdom, which is a fairly settled system and a little bit more advanced, say, than Kosovo. So I wanted to bring that experience here, and I was very glad that I had the privilege and the opportunity to do that, because I consider it a real privilege to work here and to be able to assist in the capacity building.
Këta prokuror punojnë që disa vite në Kosovë, por sa kanë arritur ata ta njohin legjislacionin e Kosovës gjatë kësaj kohe.
Before coming into mission, you get let's say, a 2 weeks basic generic training, as they call it, to get some knowledge about political and other issues here going on.
When I came to Kosovo in December 2010, we had the legislation that was the previous UNMIK legislation, namely the Criminal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. Right now, we've got a different legal regime. As of the 1st of January 2013, we've got the completely new legislation, especially the Criminal Procedure Code of Kosovo, but also the Criminal Code is a new one. For a lawyer with experience in criminal procedure, it takes a couple of months to really get to know the system from the legal point of view, to the point of being able to conduct investigations, in my view.
Kur ju keni ardhur në Kosovë, sa kohë keni pas për me mësu ligjin e Kosovës?
Actually, when I first came to Kosovo, I read the code before even I was interviewed, because I wanted to know, of course, what the law of the country is. I read the law, but I had not a perception of how it's applied in practice. And before I took the job, I came on a visit here on a long weekend to spend some time with ULEX prosecutors. And I also met some local prosecutors in Pristina. Went to a trial to see how it's done, and I realized very quickly it's very different. Everything is very different. So I wouldn't say I was an expert when I came here. I'm not an expert now, but I tried to make an effort to learn as much as I could before I came here. And the best learning is on the job, when you actually have cases in front of you, and you have to open the legal text and you have to apply the law. So that for me is the best teacher.
Por me çfarë hetimesh janë duke u marrë këta prokuror? Nita Amin është shefe e task forcës së ULEX-it për Mitrovicën, dhe detyra e saj janë hetimet e krimeve të rënda, të cilat ndodhin qoftë në jugun apo veriun e Mitrovicës. Zonë kjo e njohur si zona më e nxehtë në vend, ku sundimi I ligjit është larg standardeve normale, për shkak të ndarjes së qytetit në 2 pjesë, në atë serbe, e cila nuk kontrollohet nga autoritetet e Kosovës, dhe pjesën jugore, e cila kontrollohet nga vendorët.
Tani në Kosovë, çfarë rastesh jeni tu marrë?
In Kosovo, actually, in terms of the crimes I deal with are similar. So murders, aggravated murders, unlawful possession of weapons, human trafficking, light bodily injuries, interethnic crimes, organized crimes, distribution of narcotics, possession of unlawful weapons, domestic violence cases, and so on. So in terms of the crimes, it's similar crimes to UK.
Njëri nga hetimet të cilat shefja task forces I ka udhëhequr është hetimi ndaj 5 serbëve dhe 1 shqiptari për trazirat e vitit 2008, ku gjatë operacionit për lirimin e objektit të gjykatës së Mitrovicës ishte vrarë një polic I UNMIK-ut dhe ishin lënduar shumë të tjerë. Për këtë rast, prokurorja Nita ka akuzuar 6 persona.
So the 6 defendants have been charged with various offences. Their allegations are that they participated as a group, either in a crowd or a group, to commit various offences. For example, throwing objects at KFOR soldiers, attacking KFOR soldiers and UNMIK personnel, attacking and occupying the courthouse unlawfully, etc.
A mundeni me na tregu si keni siguru provat që këta persona I kanë kryer këto veprime?
Well, as you know, the events took place between 14th of March 2008 and 17th of March 2008. Therefore, the investigation was conducted by former UNMIC police officers, and they launched a task force, investigative task force. All the evidence was collected by UNMIC.
Ka pas edhe shumë filmime ku janë pa më shumë se 6 persona tu I kry këto veprime. A ka hetime tu vazhdu për persona tjerë në këtë rast?
One of the things I am looking at is exactly what you've asked, whether other suspects can now be identified and investigations opened. I'm at a very early stage on that investigation. Nothing formally has been opened. We're analyzing the evidence collected.
Mbram keni përfundu një proces gjyqësor me fjalën përfundimtare. Nesër ka më marrë akt vendimi gjyqësor. A pritni që persona që I keni akuzu ju me u shpallë fajtor?
Well, as a prosecutor, of course, you put the case forward in the belief that you will secure convictions. So my expectation is, and only my expectation on the evidence presented, more likely than not convictions, but that's only my opinion, and that's the opinion of any prosecutor who prosecutes.
Parashikimi I prokurorës për dënimin të akuzuarve doli të jetë pjesërisht I saktë, pasi që gjykata në veri I dënoi vetëm 3 nga 6 të akuzuarit. Procesi I shpalljes së dënimit u krye të njëjtën në 28 mars, dhe I njëjti u tentua të pengohej nga disa serbë. Mirë po përfundimisht gjatë ditës, paneli I gjykatës të Uleksit shpalli fajtor 3 të akuzuarit. Mirjan Ilić, I cili u dënua me 1 vit e 6 muaj burgim, Zoran Cavić, I cili u dënua me 9 muaj burgim me kusht, si dhe I dënuari tjetër Dragan Milojević, I cili u dënua me 1 vit e 6 muaj burgim, ndërsa 3 të pandehurit e tjerë, Miodrag Ralić, Avni Krasniqi dhe Nebojša Jović, u liruan nga të gjitha akuzat. Gjatë këtyre protestave, shikues të nderuar, ishte vrarë edhe një polis ndërkombëtar. Mirë po deri më tani, vrasësi I policit nuk është zbuluar sipas prokurorës. A keni mri me identifiku kush ka qenë personi I cili e ka vrarë policin ndërkombëtar?
So far in the investigation, we've done a lot of analysis. It's that issue is still open, and that part of the investigation is still open. So I cannot say yes or no, because we haven't reached a conclusion on that. What I can say is that the 6 defendants who are facing the trial that recently completed, they have not been charged with the murder of that international officer.
A jeni të hetu për me gjetë kush e ka vrarë policin?
Well, that investigation actually started with UNMIC, and that part of the investigation is still ongoing. So I cannot, the answer to the question is yes, that investigation is still open.
E përpos mos zbarret se kësaj vrasje, në pjesën veriore ka edhe shumë krime të tjera të pasbardhura. Kisha dashur më kthy të disa hetime tjera që lidhen me verin e Mitrovicës. Në vitin e 2000 ka pas disa trazira në atë pjesë dhe janë vrarë 10 shqiptarë. A ka hetime për ato raste?
I'm aware of the incident. As far as the investigation is concerned, I cannot answer. Because it's not one of the cases that's within my office, and of course it happened during UNMIC times. So whether UNMIC handed the cases over to ULEX, I cannot say. So I'm not able to give you a response to that.
Po për rastin e trazirave të vitit 2004, ku janë vrarë 6 qytetarë, 2 serbë dhe 4 shqiptarë, keni në rast hapur të hetimeve?
My recollection is there is an investigation open. Of course it's not within my office. So I cannot tell you which office or where it is. But my recollection, there is an investigation that's open, but I'm not sure about this.
Po nuk ka akuzant?
I cannot comment because I can only talk about what I have in my office, and I wouldn't want to speculate.
Deri më tani pam se Task Forca e Mitrovicës ka arritur të çojë para drejtësisë disa kriminal, përfshirë këtu edhe ata të cilët goditën me gur dhe uzurpuan gjykatën e Veriut në Mitrovicë. Me gjithë këtë, krimet ndëretnike si ato të vitit 2000 apo 2004 vazhdojnë të mbesin të pasbardhura. Po çka ka ndodhur me rastet e reja, siç është vrasja e qytetarit Selver Haradinaj?
Well, that investigation is still open. There's a joint investigation with ULEX and the local prosecution office and the local police and ULEX police. The investigation continues. As you know, one of the greatest difficulties is witnesses do not come forward. I think I've mentioned this before. And so we're looking at the investigation, we're trying to analyze what we've collected so far. And other than that, I cannot comment.
Edhe sa kohë ka më udashtë me u zbardhë kjo ngjarje? Se është komentuar shumë në opinion.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because in any world, any part of the world, prosecution can only do so much depending on the evidence that is collected. And we rely very much on the public to help us and for the police to rely on the public to come forward. Because the first thing, the public will know who the witnesses are or whether they've seen something. And that is lacking, as you know. And it's one of the biggest disadvantages of many of the prosecutions progressing.
Pra ju ende nuk e dini edhe sa kohë ka më zgjatë?
Yes, I cannot give a time limit, and I don't want to put all the emphasis on the public. As you know, the access to the north is not full for ULEX, and until that is resolved, either through dialogue or other political means, then many of the investigations will take far longer than one would expect them to take.
Sipas asaj që na tha prokuroria, shumë hetime në veri varen nga aktiviteti politik. Po si vepron ky mision në atë pjesë?
A mund më na shpjegoj praktikisht çu shetohet një rast në pjesën veriore?
So if you take the example of, say, an incident in the northern part, all incidents are reported to Brava Control, which sits in the South Mitrovica region. From there, the local KP first get the crime incident call. In most cases, if not all, they actually attend the crime scene. When they need assistance, they will call ULEX Task Force Police to say, we need you to come with us, because there may be some reasons. And only then will the ULEX police get involved. On the prosecution side, I will just first of all call the local prosecutor to see if they need any assistance. And I have to say, in most cases, they handle the initial investigation perfectly well. And often they carry the whole investigation through with us just monitoring. Sometimes they will say, we need your assistance a little bit more for, say, example, metering or some requests. And then we will also try and advise and work in mixed teams. So it's a question of what type of investigation it is and what type of assistance they're seeking. We would decide our response.
Prokurori Anita thot se task forca e cila merret me hetimin në pjesën më problematike të vendit e ka të vështirë të hetojë krimet në këtë pjesë, për shkak se u mungojnë dëshmitarët.
Sa e keni vështirë me mbledh prova për këto raste që heton?
It is difficult sometimes because, as I said at the beginning, there is a lack of community or witnesses coming forward. So when you have a crime, your best evidence is from the community, who are the eyes and the ears of what's going on in their community. And very often you don't get the witnesses coming forward, ready to give a statement, ready to sign their name to the statement, because they fear that something will happen to them if they are seen to be speaking against somebody. So we have to find ways of encouraging the witnesses to come forward. There is also some difficulty sometimes in obtaining technical evidence.
Problem tjetër për hetimet për prokurorët në veri janë edhe sigurimi I dëshmive nga përgjigjet telefonike, pasi që për të siguruar ato, duhet të bëhet kërkesë autoriteteve serbe.
So, for example, in northern Mitrovica, we know that the telecommunications are Serbian-owned, and for a prosecutor to get into that technical evidence, we have to make the request to Serbia. So that can pose some challenges, although I have to say that we have yes, we do, and we've had great successes on getting results. We've had great cooperation from Serbian authorities. On a prosecutor level, we have no problems, and we do get the metering, which I think is an added advantage.
Prokuroria na foli për problemet e sigurimit të provave në pjesën veriore. Mirë po, sipas asaj, këto probleme janë të ngjashme edhe në pjesën jugore, ku banojnë shqiptarët. Njëri nga rastet është edhe vrasja e Hakif Hysenit nga fshati Shqipali Mitrovicës, i cili është vrarë në balkonin e tij para 3 muajsh.
Në jug të Mitrovicës ka pas një vrasje mes shqiptarëve. Familjarët kanë dalë dhe kanë thënë që vrasja është kry ku patrulla e policisë ka qenë shumë afër. A është bërë diçka rreth kësaj ngjarje?
Yes, that was a recent murder case. There was another event linked to that. Prior to the murder, there was an incident on the main bridge, and the two are connected in terms of the probably the motive. Yes, it's true that there were KP police on patrol when the incident of the murder took place. That investigation is open with the local police and the local prosecutors, and we're still gathering evidence on that case.
Apo keni probleme me dëshmitarët këtë rast?
Yes, even though this occurred in the south, it's interesting that the pattern is the same. The witnesses are reluctant to come forward for whatever reason. We're working on the investigation to build some confidence with the public to come forward.
Pra problemi është i njëjtë, si në jug si në veri, dëshmitarët po hezitojnë me bashkëpunu me prokurorinë.
It depends. On some of the cases, yes, because the public usually knows more than the prosecutor or the police. Particularly in Kosovo, we're a very close society. Everybody knows each other, so they get to know what happened before the police do. So the problem is generically the same.
E sigurimi I dëshmive për prokurorët e Euleksit zakonisht bëhen nga policët e Kosovës. Megjithatë, në raste specifike, policia e Kosovës nuk lejohet të marrë erë në hetimet e Euleksit.
Gjatë zhvillimit të hetimeve, cili është bashkëpunimi juaj me policinë e Kosovës?
Very good. It's very good. Definitely the benefit is that they are really engaged in what they do. They are really dedicated. In most of my cases, I'm just talking right now from my personal prosecutorial point of view, whatever they are entrusted with, they do on time, diligently, with full dedication. What is very good about Kosovo police is that they know this local touch, this element I have just mentioned. They know the society, they know the rules that the society is following. So very often, it's really fantastic to cooperate with the police. In each and every case, the cooperation is very good, but sometimes it's even better than that.
In Mitrovica, yes, I do. And I say that because, as you know, Mitrovica is a special area for all its political, geographical reasons. But when you look at the core police, local police, they really do a good job. You know, they have the real drive to investigate cases. They have the real drive to provide the best service to the prosecutors that they can within the limits of their abilities and the limits of the tools that they have. Sometimes they don't have the right tools because this is a developing state. Everybody doesn't expect them to be fully operational. So I would say I have very good cooperation with the police. And in fact, there are some very, very good investigators here. I would say sometimes better than some of the internationals, which would be quite an admission, but that's a compliment to the local service.
Në cilat raste ju detyroni të angazhoni policët e Euleksit?
We don't have this rigid division of tasks between the Eulex police and the Kosovo police. Just to give you an example of the war crimes, we've got the Eulex police unit, but this Eulex is also composed of Kosovo police officers. So I would say that in several cases we entrust some units, like war crimes unit, and that the case is dealt with by the Eulex police and also at the same time by Kosovo police officers. There are also some joint operations conducted by the Kosovo and Eulex police. In my cases, I entrust either Eulex police or Kosovo police, but practically I cannot see a huge difference. Both Eulex and Kosovo police officers are really professional and deeply engaged in what they do. That is the practical point from my cases, and I could comment on my cases. So this is my impression I'm sharing right now with you.
Prezenca e këtyre prokurorëve arsyetohet edhe me faktin se shumë raste të krimeve të rënda dhe korrupsionit nuk po u besohen prokurorëve vendor. Këta të fundit thonë se në këto raste ndjejnë veten jo mirë, dhe për këtë arsye kërkojnë që lëndët të merren dhe të hetohen nga prokurorët e Uleksit.
Pse shpesh rastet e korrupsionit i marrin prokurorët e Uleksit?
Po shqo, në lëndët e korrupsionit apo lëndët ku ne dyshojmë, apo kur i hapim hetimet për shpërdrim detyrë zyrtare, aty si njerëz të tanë janë mësu me thonë, au, po na bojnë për inati, kanë tendenca, kanë kështu, janë grupeve caktuara kështu më radhë.
Domthonë keni pas raste që
për mi hek këto dilema, ne kemi shfrytzuar prezencën e prokurorit të Uleksit, edhe prokurori i Uleksit edhe në këto raste na kanë ndihmuar, na kemi pas një rast edhe me kryetarin e komunës, po edhe me disa zyrtarë tjerë të komunës ku kanë qenë disa çështje mjaft të ndihshme apo çështje të cilat për neve kanë qenë nuk kanë qenë pa
Uleksit. Pse është dashur rasti me marrë Uleksit?
Kanë filluar disa dyshime se na nuk do të jemi ne prokurorët vendor aq objektiv.
A ka pas kërcënime ndonjëherë ndaj prokurorëve vendor? Jo, vetëm për këtë rast, por në përgjithësi.
Jo, kërcënime, jo, s'mund të them, mirë, po ka pas kështu përmes opinionit kanë dalë me disa se nuk kanë besim të prokurorët vendor, kështu më radhë. Ja kemi një rast edhe tash aktual është një person i cili dyshohet për një vrasje, ai thotë s'kam besim me dhënë deklaratë. Jo, unë du vetëm para prokurorit të Uleksit, gjyqtarët të Uleksit e kështu më radhë. Pra, kur shfaqet ndonjë dyshim, ndonjë pasiguri, atëherë i marrin këto lëndë.
Mirë po nga ana tjetër, prokurorët ndërkombëtar të intervistuar duken më modest. Ata nuk dojnë ta pranojnë se kolegët e tyre vendor nuk po kanë guxim të jetojnë rastet sensitive.
Në Kosovë ekziston një përshtypje që vetëm prokurorët ndërkombëtar i jetojnë rastet e rënda. Apo jetojnë edhe ju me këtë?
Maybe this is a widespread notion, but this is not correct. Right now, I work for the Special Prosecution Office of the Republic of Kosovo. We have international prosecutors and also Kosovo prosecutors, and the distribution of cases is equal amongst the locals and internationals. So this is not true that only the internationals conduct all these investigations. Many investigations of a very difficult and tricky character are conducted by the local prosecutors. I wouldn't really say that the weight of the cases, the abundance of those tricky cases are dealt with by only internationals. This is not my impression, and this is not simply true.
Po kem pa që shumë shpesh prokurorët vendor hezitojnë me jetu krimet e rënda dhe këtë punë ja lajnë me bë prokurorët e Uleksit.
That's not my experience. It may be a perception in the public, but my personal experience is that I would not say they leave it to us to do the work. They in fact engage with us when they need assistance, and we are there to assist them. We would very much like them to build capacity by themselves. And in my experience, ULEX prosecutors work with the local prosecutors, particularly in Mitrovica. Where they need assistance, we step in, we assist, we advise them, we guide them into the European standards, we guide them on the interpretation of the law according to the European standards. So I would not say that they are reluctant and they just say ULEX do everything. That's not my experience.
Megjithatë keni raste kur është dashur veç ju me hetu, jo prokurorët vendor.
I mean, if you're talking general terms, I can't think of general terms. I can say that majority of my investigations are mixed team. The focus for us is mixed team, which means we work side by side with the local prosecutor. Why? Because when you work in a mixed team, we both have equal responsibility on the case. It also gives ULEX a chance as a prosecutor to advise that local prosecutor from the beginning of the investigation or in the middle of the investigation to build that case up ready for trial. So what we're doing is that, yes, they do the cases sometimes, but we bring in the European standard perspective into that investigation. And to give you an example, we had one investigation in a mixed team. The law in Kosovo is not very clear on how to identify suspects through identification parades. So we sat with the local prosecutor and we brought in the European standard, actually from UK, on how identification parades are conducted and how you make that process fair. And that's a good example of where we filled the gap and we were able to progress that investigation.
Po thoni se prokurorët e ULEX-it merren me rastet sensitive. Çka janë këto rastet sensitive që prokurorët tonë nuk mundin me u marrë me to?
Well, it's not an issue that they are not able to deal with. There are some agreements and provisions and let's say agreements that make that for a certain time the investigations are dealt with mostly in a joint effort by local prosecution and ULEX prosecution. As I can give an example, if there is serious inter-ethnic offenses, let's say to improve and support confidence in a fair and good investigation, often ULEX prosecution office will be asked to enter into the investigation. It's a matter of agreements.
Ju si prokuror, jeni përballë herë me kërkesat prokurorëve vendor që jo me u marrë me lanë që ata I kanë të jetu?
No, that they can deal with all the cases, but in a number of cases we are asked to join the and to work in a mixed team, as we call it.
Nëse kjo çfarë na than prokurorët e ULEX-it është e vërtet, atëherë pse Kosova ka nevojë për këtë mision? Natyrisht, për këtë në fillim ne e pyetëm të parin e prokurorisë të Prizrenit.
Po, për rastet caktume, besoj që po kemi disa raste, për thënë dhe të kësaj natyre shpërdorim të tyre zyrtarëve të lartë, apo edhe për në rast specifik, për thëmë kështu, në rast më të rrallë, sigurisht se edhe një kohë do të na duhej prezenca dhe ndihma dhe bashkëpunimi edhe I prokurorëve të ULEX-it.
Po cila pra është arsyeja që na duhet me pas prokurorët e ULEX-it? Nëse I kemi prokurorët vendor profesional.
That's a good question, but as you know, the ULEX mission is the largest mission in Europe. 26 member states voted for the mission to operate in Kosovo. We also operate under 1244, so when UNMIK left, we came in. So we have a legal basis to be here. And yes, the local prosecutors are professional, but one of the things we're trying to do very hard as a ULEX mission is to build the local capacity to bring it to the European standards. And I think that there is no disagreement there between myself and the local colleagues, that they do need some assistance in bringing up the standards into the European standards. That doesn't mean they're not professional.
Me gjithë fjalët e mira për prokurorët vendor, shkuarja e prokurorëve ndërkombëtar duket se është e largët. Të paktën kështu na than vetë prokurorët ndërkombëtar.
Nga përshtypja juaj edhe sa vjet kanë me dashur Kosovës prokurorët e ULEX-it?
You know, for me it's very difficult because no prosecution system is perfect. You know, we may want it to be perfect, but it can never be perfect. But I go back to the recent feasibility study that has been done by the Commission on Kosovo to see if Kosovo is ready to sign the pre-accession agreement to join Europe. And I think that's the best indicator of whether ULEX is ready to give over the capacities or not. And of course, if you read that interim report, it says that they're not ready yet for various reasons. And one of the reasons is that they still feel, the Commission, that there are still gaps in the rule of law and in the capacity building in the rule of law. And they see the rule of law as the key driver for membership to Europe. So I take that report, which is a report outside the prosecutor's opinion, and I say to myself, well, you know, if this is the case, then we need to be here a little bit longer maybe. My personal experience and my opinion is, yes, there are still things to be done. You know, there's still some way to go. But we're on the right road. We're on the right track, and we're traveling in the right direction, which is very positive.
Edhe sa më gjatë me vite?
You know, it's very difficult to predict because the whole world is changing. There's conflict in a lot of parts of the world. And when you want to reach European standards, you know, the Brussels, the member states, they will impose the standards. They will decide when Kosovo is ready. So I cannot say I can say from my little world of prosecution that there is a long way to go in some parts. You know, not because the people aren't able to do it, because the institutions are still building capacity. So for prosecutors to work with those institutions, they need to be functioning in a democratic and in a functional way. So that's the time when we might be able to say, okay, if those institutions are working, this is working, this is working. Because it's a whole chain, it's not just one office by itself deciding. So I would say there's still a way to go.
Përshtypja juaj edhe sa vite ka më dasht misioni EULEX-it me punu në Kosovë?
Well, it's difficult to say. Let's say, working at a local level, I have not an overview of let's say, the future and necessity, or let's say, sensed necessity for when the mission will end. But in my thinking, it would maybe take some few years, some months or few years, before they come to final, let's say, finalization of the mission.
Prokurorët na treguan se do qëndrojnë në Kosovë edhe për një kohë, po apo arrin ata të bindin popullatën tonë, tu tregojnë për krimet të cilat janë duke ndodhur në vend.
Cili është mendimi juaj? A e toleron shoqëria jonë krimin?
I don't think so. I don't think so, and I believe that people are really very often fed up with it. As a citizen of my own country, I'm fed up with the criminality in my country. To some extent, this was the reason for which I became a prosecutor. I decided to become a prosecutor. I don't think that Kosovo tolerates criminality. I don't believe that any society in Europe and in the world tolerates criminality. It's against the interests of the people, of the society. If people steal the money from the budget, they steal the money from the society, from your pocket. I wouldn't like it. Do you?
Ku qëndron arsyeja që dëshmitarët nuk pranojnë me tregu për krimet që ndodhin?
You know, I think personally there are a number of reasons. I may not be right. First of all, I think everybody tells me, and I've seen it, Kosovo is a small country. Most people know each other. Traditionally, you have very good family units, so people are afraid sometimes to give evidence against somebody else for fear of reprisals, fear of threats. There are also maybe a lack of some trust in the institutions that are enforcing the law, maybe a lack of outcome. You know, they're not confident that they will get the outcome if they give evidence. Maybe a lack of understanding of how does the legal system work and how will my evidence be used. Maybe not some better care of witnesses. You know, sometimes you call witnesses, they wait for hours to give evidence, and then they disappear and they don't understand why the case didn't take place. So it could be a whole range of reasons. And these are not dissimilar reasons that we face in other European countries.
Në rastet që ju I keni hetua, keni pas vështirë me siguru dëshmitar?
It's very difficult to, well, I don't have personal experience with witnesses becoming a protected witness.
Po flasim për dëshmitarët e thjeshtë, që nuk ka nevojë me u mbrojt. A e tregojnë ata të vërtetën? A kanë frikë ata me tregu të vërtetën?
Well, I must say that yes, it's very difficult to have people that step forward to give witness statement here in let's say the north, in the Mitrovica region. We experienced that it's very difficult to get witnesses to testify, and I think we can challenge or should challenge this by a continuous effort to gain the confidence of citizens in a lawful, trustworthy, independent and impartial justice system. That's the way to deal with, so that people come forward and testify.
Prokurorët na thanë se dëshmitarët po kanë frikë të dëshmojnë për krimet që po ndodhin në Kosovë. Po apo kanë frikë prokurorët e EULEX-it të punojnë në Kosovë.
A kërcënohen prokurorët e EULEX-it?
Again, I could only speak about myself. So far, I have not been threatened. Sometimes the truth is that, let's say, it's part of the job. You know, you conduct criminal investigations. You sometimes face the people who are not of the best sort in the society. So I know that such things could happen, but in my case, so far, no threats has ever been directed towards me.
Prokurorët vendorë në Kosovë ankohen për shkak të sigurisë tyre personale, po e keni edhe ju si prokuror të Euleksit këtë program. Frigoni për sigurinë tuaj.
I personally don't have fears of such threat. I'm sure that threats exist, you know, for prosecutors and law enforcement agencies. Threats, unfortunately, can be part and parcel of the work that you do in any country, maybe more so here. Of course, the local prosecutors do face threats here because I've heard of, some examples of it. And I have to say that they act extremely professionally, that even in the light of those threats, I've never heard a local prosecutor that I've worked with to say, I don't want to do this case. They do their professional job. They have avenues of making complaints, yes, to register that threat, but I've never ever heard a local prosecutor say, I'm not going to do this because I was threatened, which I think is admirable because it can be a frightening situation.
Ju po thoni që prokurorët e Euleksit nuk po kërcënohen, e prokurorët vendor thonë që po kërcënohen nga pak. Ku qëndron arsyeja? Pse nuk guxojnë me kërcënu prokurorët e Euleksit?
Well, I didn't say Eulex doesn't get threats. Of course, from time to time, I'm sure Eulex prosecutors have had threats. I think the nature of the threats might be different because, you know, local prosecutors live in the community and they are known here for a long time. They know their families. We are very newcomers. Our threats may be slightly different. But I think the common factor is that the prosecutors receive threats occasionally, and how those threats are dealt with, either by Eulex or local prosecutors. And I would say that the local prosecutors respond extremely well. Professionally, they continue, they're aware of the threat, but it doesn't divert them from doing the job that they're employed to do. And I would say the same for Eulex prosecutors. I have not heard of an example of any prosecutor saying, I'm not doing this, or I'm leaving.
Të mirë paguar nga vendet e tyre, prokurorët e Euleksit thonë se nuk do e kishin problem të punonin në Kosovë edhe me rrogat të cilat i kanë prokurorët vendor.
Po që se shteti i Kosovës do t'i ofronte një pagë të një prokurori vendor, a do të kishit pranuar të punoni me atë pagë?
Locally, I believe the salary is not bad at all. Locally, for the local prices and if you compare the...
Në krahasim me ato që keni ju, besoj që ka dallim.
The story is that if you compare my salary I receive in Poland with the salaries paid in some other countries in Europe, you come to the conclusion that we are not paid enough. But it's a very relative issue, you know. The salary should reflect the prices that are in a certain country. For Kosovo, I believe the salary is not so bad. Of course, always the issue is that the salary of certain public officials, especially doing such a dangerous and responsible job, the salary could be.
A kishit punuar me një pagë të një prokurorit vendor të Kosovës?
If I lived in Kosovo, perhaps I could. Because the salary here reflects, one, the local prices, second, the budgetary situation of the state. It's always like this.
Po folni për shumë punë, po nëse shteti i Kosovës ju kishte ofruar pagë, ai ishi bë prokuror e Kosovës me pagën që ka një prokuror vendor?
Yes, I would. Shall I tell you why? Because money is not everything. Of course, money is necessary. But what it means is that it gives you that opportunity to be in the system that needs reform. So if you're out of the game, you can't complain. But if you're in and part of the game, you have a chance to change and learn from the better things. So yes, of course I would. And you know, I've been in Kosovo since 2008. If I didn't like it, I would have left a year. But I'm still here because I enjoy the challenge of building capacity. And I enjoy working with the local prosecutors because I see real potential there and real experience. So that's why I stay. So I would take the job. Yes, it's low salary, but I think the rewards come from the work satisfaction of the changes you make.
Po zakonisht prokuror vendori në anku për pagat.
Yes, but you know, it's not a bad thing to complain about salary, because if you have freedom of labor and you want to do a good job, they have families to support, they have a right to complain. That doesn't mean that they're not happy working there. And you know, the problem is that they often see international prosecutors or other prosecutors in other countries maybe earning more than them and doing maybe less of the work. It happens in all countries. So it's a healthy thing that they complain and they're not complacent. But at the same time, they continue to do a professional job, and that's important. And maybe, you know, they're right sometimes. Maybe they're right that they're getting too low a pay, commensurate with the duties they have to carry out. It's not for me to say. But I don't think that we should say it's a critical thing to do, to complain. It's a healthy thing to do.
Të ardhur nga Anglia, Polonia dhe Belgjika, 3 prokurorët që na rrëfyen përvojat e tyre në Kosovë, na treguan edhe çka ju pëlqen nga vendi ynë.
What I do like the most, well, it's a beautiful country. You have the mountains in the south and these surroundings here, these hilly surroundings, make me think of the south of France, the region of the Mont Saint-Victoire near Aix-en-Provence, where the painter Cézanne lived and worked and had some of his most famous drawings made. You have beautiful long summers here, so that I like very much. This is, let's say, good to live here.
Nga ushqimi çka I pëlqen?
Well, I'm fond of fish, and you have very tasty fish dishes here with very tasty vegetables that are served in so many restaurants. I like this food.
Dhe në fund, zotin prokuror, cili është ushqimi juaj I preferuar në Kosovë?
My favorite food, but served only in one place. It's called Skanderbeg. It's my absolutely favorite food. It's served in one of the restaurants, I'm not going to mention the name, outside of Prizren, and also I adore Kosovo trofta, grilled trofta, trout. It's fantastic. I've just had one.
A keni ndëgjuar historinë e Skanderbegut?
Of course. Yes. Very gifted strategist. Congratulations.
Shikues të nderuar, ishte kjo e tëra për sonte. Ju mund të na ndiqni në drejtësia.kosov.com. Të gjithë ata që kanë për ta raportuar korrupsionin ose dukuritë negative, këtë mund ta bëjnë në kallzo.com. Unë tani po e lë me rubrikën Policia dhe nga unë Krishtin Gashi, deri të dielën e ardhshme. Mos e shkelni ligjin.